What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. Of course, this is TWA Motorsports, and today we're going to continue the progress on the WS6 twin turbo build, and we are on the engine. In the last video, you guys saw me make some room for the transmission, and I told you in that video we are going to be assembling this thing in the next video. So my goal today, guys, is to get the heads on, the oil pan, the turbos, everything back to a kind of almost long block. I'm not going to be able to put the valley cover on yet because I'm going to need that as a hooking point to put it on the K-member. But the goal is to get a majority of the outside stuff on, probably not the accessories other than the water pump, but for sure the heads, the oil pan, the turbos, and the goal is to kind of clear off that table there. I'd like to get it completely out of the way. I'm running out of room here, guys. So let's get this thing unbagged, and I think we'll start with the oil pan, and we'll go from there. Now, since we're using the oil pan that we originally had on that other motor, I've got to scrape some gasket material off in the corners, and I'm just going to run over it with a brand new razor blade, making sure everything's good. We've got a new pan gasket sitting on top of my wheel box there. I'm also going to clean, even though this came out of the machine shop and it looks amazing, I'm still going to go over the bottom one time, make sure we don't have any dust on there, and then we'll get our silicone. You need to put silicone in the corners, and I'll show you guys kind of what's going on there, but then we'll hopefully get the pan in. I've got a majority of my bolts, you can see, all cleaned up. I think I showed you guys that in the last video. I may not have, but let's get the pan cleared off and get some silicone on these corners. One of the things that I do, I generally don't rivet the stock pan gasket back on. That's what these holes are for. The original one was riveted on, but if you thread the bolts up in, they'll hold in place into the gasket. And so I generally don't do that. But we're ready at this point to get this thing on the bottom. The corners, guys, you can see that the machine shop that did this, they already put some gasket material in these corners. I'm going to put a little bit additional in there just to make sure we don't have any issues. And I may even scrape that right there just to make sure we've got a good surface. But I'll show you the little bead that I put, and it's in between the front and rear timing cover in the corners here. That's where you generally have the leak. So we'll do that real quick. You can see here, hopefully you guys can see that bead I put in that opening. And did that in all four corners. So now we can go ahead, grab the pan, and I like to put it up there as evenly as possible. So I'll probably set in my chair while I start some of these bolts. But here's what I don't want to do, guys, and I probably won't show you this in a time lapse, but I don't want to squish up against this and then move that bead around. So I'm trying to come up evenly as possible, if that makes sense. You can see I've got these started, but there's a little bit of a gap. So I wanted to come up as slow and as even as possible. The other thing, guys, is we need to get a piece of metal and set on this back here to make sure that we're flush. We should be, but you could potentially crack your oil pan pulling the two together if these aren't flush. So it's a good spot right here to measure. And then on the other side, you're gonna have to go up to the corner of the block here. So you need a flat, basically a straight edge. Now that we've got everything lined up, I put a straight edge back here on this ledge. On the other side, guys, like I said, you're gonna have to go up to where the engine mount is mounted. So you'll have to go from the pan to this corner up here, the flange. There's the only way to do it because this is not going to line up. And the pan has probably a 1/16 or more of movement back and forth. So we can go ahead now, torque all our 10 millimeters around the perimeter to 18 foot-pounds. These small ones in the back, however, okay, these long ones that go up into the rear cover, they go to 106 inch-pounds. So do not put 18 foot-pounds on them. We now have the pan on, which is exciting. Remember, 18, 106 on those long ones in the back. Okay, guys, normally I'd put the heads on at this point and the lifters and whatnot, but I'm still waiting on delivery of the head studs. They're supposed to be here any minute. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the water pump on. The cool thing about obviously bringing your block home from a machine shop is you don't have any old gasket material to clean off. I'll probably wipe it down, but I'm gonna go grab that. We can put that on, put the heads on after, not gonna be a big deal. So let's go grab, I bought a brand new GM water pump, which you can see sitting right here, came with new gaskets, and I cleaned up all our old hardware. So let's go ahead and wipe this stuff off and get this thing on there. Now, if you hold this thing flat enough, you can keep the gaskets on while you're going in with the bolts. It's kind of nice. And I did put, just if you guys noticed, a little bit of thread sealant. And sorry guys, it's getting noisy. It is sleeting right now. Crazy weather we have. Once we get them started and make sure they're not cross-threading, we'll go ahead and start to snug them up. Probably a dumb idea to do this first, but we still have ample room to put the heads on. And this is the newer style. And of course, guys, I'll list all the stuff I'm using in the description, but the newer style has a completely different thermostat housing than the original. It's nice that it at least comes with new thermostat housing bolts though. And I believe these are 106 inch-pounds too, but I'll double check and we'll worry about getting them snugged down next. This is why you double check. 11 foot-pounds first pass, and we're going to go in a crisscross pattern. So here, center on the other, top, bottom, bottom, top. If that makes sense. So 11 first pass, 11 foot-pounds, 22 on the second. I figured since we were here, we might as well put the new housing in place. And so when I say new housing, guys, the old one has the this thermostat is built in, so it's all one unit. The newer style water pump, so if you ever buy a replacement water pump for an F body, you'll get what they call the new style. It will have a separate housing. I believe they both will fit on the same. Well, no, I take that back. They will not, because the thermostat's a little smaller. So I've got a new Motorrad thermostat here, and it is a 160. So this is kind of how that fits. If you had the older style, it's all incorporated into this. And this only goes one way here, and kind of see if we can sneak it down in there. I don't want to fold the gasket over, so be careful putting it in. I may use a small flat blade screwdriver. It's kind of cold out here, so oh, there we go. I got it. You just want to make sure your gasket isn't folded over. I think we're good. So we'll put it on, and it torques to 11 foot-pounds. Now that we've got that on, still waiting on FedEx. Let's go ahead. I think we can do this right now, and if we can't, we may have to undo things. But I'm going to go ahead and put the motor mounts on the side. Probably putting a bunch of stuff in the way that we shouldn't, but I believe these torque down to 35 foot-pounds or 34. Most of the stuff into the block is generally all the same. We'll give it a shot. I don't know that I'll be able to cinch down my drain line, but if, you know, worst case scenario, we'll take them back off. I'm going to get these on both sides. These are side specific. The instructions in the Huron Speed Kit kind of let you know which way goes where, but you can see kind of how they mount. It's an oddball deal, but you need more room for the turbo clearance. Next thing I'm going to put in is the crank position sensor. You have to kind of force it in. There we go. If you have to force it in, that's good, because that means it's got a good seal on it. Get the 10 millimeter in it. I did spin an oil filter on the other side too. I'm trying to keep this motor, once we get, you know, this stuff done, as closed up as possible. So you'll probably see me tape off like you know, the inlets to the water pump. And this torques down to 18 foot-pounds, crank position sensor does. Actually, don't even need the extension here. I don't like torquing with an extension anyway because it's not real accurate. Sometimes, you know, you have to, but all right, we're set with that. Now we have the lifters. Now look guys, I know some people soak their lifters and some don't. I'm gonna be soaking mine in some Driven LS30. It's really, I'd rather use break-in, but I don't have any break-in handy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna attempt to put them in this tray that I've stolen out of my house. I hope my wife's not watching this. She probably isn't. I was looking for like a Tupperware tray, you know. So we're gonna put these things in here. We're gonna coat them in oil. I'm gonna let these set in here until my bolts get here, or my head studs, which hopefully isn't a terribly long time. But these are really high quality lifters, guys. These are about the best you can get. They're obviously really expensive. I think I paid $700 for these guys. I know a lot of people use the CTSV or LS7 lifters, and even my engine builder recommended those. But I wanted it's so hard to get a consistent one as far as parts go. It seems like they have a $100 one, and then they have like the nice ones, like the CTSV version. And it just seems like every time I order them, I never get the right thing. So we're gonna do this. I'm gonna coat these in oil and let them set. And then hopefully by that time, in an hour or two, the head studs will be here. We'll get those started, and then we'll work on, I got new lifter trays as well. Now that the lifters have been soaking for actually a couple days while I waited on head studs, I thought they were gonna be here that day. We've got new lifter trays, which guys, they do go a certain direction. You can see there, we've got the bolts over there, but I'm gonna go ahead and load the lifters into the tray. Look, there is a hole on the side of the lifter. I'm gonna just make sure they all face the same way. I don't really think it matters which way. It doesn't matter if they go left or right. If they were up or down, it may. Some people say on the LS7 lifters that you need to put the hole in the side of the lifter down. I don't know. I've never looked at that, to be honest with you, and I've done a ton of these. So let me know in the comments if you guys know, but let's get these lifters loaded up and see if we can get that in place. Got them loaded up. We're just gonna kind of work them back and forth until we get them in here. Don't force anything. Just kind of nicely wiggle back and forth. I'm gonna clean the surface off before, but the other thing I'm gonna do before we put the bolts in, make sure the bolt's clean, and I'm gonna put a little bit of Loctite, just a drop of blue Loctite on it to make sure that we don't have any issues as far as them backing out. That's always something I've done, guys. You don't have to put Loctite on them. Do not like coat it. Don't use red, use blue. And once we get that Loctite on there, then I'll talk about torque specs. Now that we got them all in, we're gonna go ahead and start threading these guys in. 106 inch-pounds if you're dealing with a Gen 3 motor, which we are. 89 inch-pounds, which is weird if you're dealing with a Gen 4. I don't understand that because the lifter trays are the same, but they have a little collar on them too, so you just make sure that they're not bunching up. So we'll go ahead and get those spun in with, like I said, a little bit of Loctite. I got a little blue Loctite on them. And we'll get them torqued down to 106. And then, guys, I'm gonna clean the head off, or the mating surfaces really well. And we'll get the head gaskets and hopefully some head studs in place. I'm going to, like I said, clean all the deck surface off, making sure we don't have anything on there. Probably do this a couple times. I'm trying to use a lint-free microfiber so we don't get any kind of issues. And guys, I know this is probably different than everybody else does it. But I like to put my head studs in and then put the head on it. Call me crazy, I know. But that's just how I like to do it. I know a lot of people will put the head studs in after they put the head on, but to me it threads on a little easier if you do it the other way. So once we got that cleaned, we're gonna grab our dowels for the corners here, and I had to order a new set of these. I didn't have any, so we'll probably may have to get a rubber mallet and tap those into place. And once we get those in, then I'm gonna go grab my head gasket and we'll get the head gasket on. Now, like several people, I'm using LS1 head gaskets. I know that it does not fit. Technically it's bigger around than the stock LS1 block that we're using, but it's never seemed to cause issues, and so that's what I'm using. Just like I ordered them from GM, if I can just get them out of the package. So we'll set them in place and you'll see what I'm talking about. You've got a lot of area around the piston. You can see when you push it down, I guess it's not a ton, but there is some overhang there. But it's what everybody uses, it's what I've used in the past, and so, oh, I got them on the wrong way. Somebody's probably screaming at the camera right now. So let me get them on the right way. With the front, I noticed my water jacket didn't line up. Oh, that makes sense now. I'm glad I noticed that before I slapped the head on there. So now we've got that in place, I'm gonna go ahead and grab our ARP head studs and we're gonna start threading those into place. Okay, I've changed my mind. ARP's directions specifically say, put the head on, then run them in. So that's what I'm gonna do. So guys, I've got my heads back from Texas Speed. And remember, we had these are the 317 heads that came off that 6-liter block over there. Had them ran through their CNC port and had them put down, I think it's 70 cc. So it should put us right around that like 9.5 to 1 compression with these pistons. But I am going to wipe this surface off as well. So we're gonna clean all this surface off. And then ARP recommends to clean the surfaces off where the washers are gonna set. So we'll do that as well. And then we'll set this thing on there. Got the head all cleaned off, didn't take much. So now if I can flip this over without dropping it, that'd be good. And we'll see if we can set it into place. Should line up on those dowels. There we go. Perfect. So I kind of like to keep one hand on it, but we're gonna go ahead. I'm probably gonna start with the smaller ones first, just because that kind of puts some pressure up against the top, and then we'll worry about spinning the other ones in. Now I'm using a small Allen to put these top ones in, just to get them snug. And just hand tight is what we're looking for here. But that gives me the ability for that not to rock back now. So we'll go ahead, thread the rest of them in, then we'll talk about, there are 2 shorter ones that you have to use on each side. So we got long ones and short ones, as you'll see when you buy these things, if you've got a Gen 3 block like I do. The long ones are all gonna go kind of on the outer here. And the cool thing about having your block machine, guys, is you don't have to go through and clean. They clean all the threads out for you, so man, that is nice. So we'll get this threaded in. That's a long one. All the ones across the bottom are long. Your only short ones, and it'll be real easy to tell when you're putting them in because your short ones won't go down very far. In fact, I'll show you here. If you have it in the wrong spot, so let's say you tried to put a long one here, see how much sticks out? but yet if you put it in this hole, see how far it goes down? So your short one, this guy here, will go into that spot. And we'll go ahead and thread all these in off camera. Get them down by hand. I'm not using, as you can see, I'm not using a ratchet. I'm just threading them in by hand until they stop. Now that we have all those spun in by hand, not torqued, right? Just spun until they stopped. We've got washers. So the instructions per ARP says to put this, making sure that the surface is clean that you're setting them on. So we're gonna do all those washers, and there is a certain way, I don't know if you guys noticed the stamp part of the washer there, that's supposed to not spin as you're torquing these down. That's supposed to hold up against this. That's another reason why they wanted you to clean all these surface areas here, okay, which we already did. So now I'm gonna go ahead and put the washers along each and every one of these, and then we'll grab the nut that goes on them. I'm gonna put the ones up top too, even though those get torqued very last. We'll put them all the way across, and then we'll grab the nut, and we're gonna have to obviously put some of the stuff, the coating, the ultra torque, the assembly lube. We'll put some of that on as we're going with the nut, both on the thread and on the actual bottom side of the nut. Now that we have all the washers on, we're gonna put some of this assembly lube, which is like smearing snot. We're gonna put that on the threads, and then we're gonna put it on the bottom of the bolt. This is where it gets fun. And we're gonna put this on. Now I'm gonna do all of these so I can clean my hands off before I grab like the torque wrench and we go to town and talk about the sequence that we need to place, because you can't just torque this one down. There's a sequence where you start in the middle and work your way out. But let me get this all started, which is gonna be really fun on the inners here, because obviously there's not a whole lot of way to get down there to the threads. So I'm gonna have to get something to reach down in there and get this stuff on the threads, but we'll get it done. Got them all on there. What was that size? 9/16, 12 point. I went with the 12 point ones. They make a 6 point as well, guys, if you want to do a 6 point. I'll list all this stuff in the description like always, but here's what we need to do. It specifically says tighten the nuts 1 through 10, which are these guys, right? The big ones, not the small ones. We got to torque them down to 25 foot-pounds the first pass, second pass 50 foot-pounds, third pass 80, and then the very last thing we do is step 4, and that is we go 28 foot-pounds across the top ones. But here's the kicker. There is a sequence, and I'll try to put that up to the camera, and you can look this up online, but we're going to start in the middle here at 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So your small ones, your short ones get torqued last. Once we do all that through 25, 50, 80, then we will go across the top. You'll start in the middle with the number, that's number 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So you're alternating back and forth. Make sure you follow that process. The other thing is, when I put that assembly lube on, when you're trying to put the bolt, it was really tough. I used a actual Q-tip to put that stuff on these, because you can't reach your finger down in there. But it kind of helps because it keeps the nut in place from like falling over. And then I got the socket and kind of started threading it in. So we're gonna go ahead and start torquing this. If I run into any issues, I will cut back in, but if not, we will be completely torqued and ready to move on to the other head, hopefully. Holy cow, guys. That is some torque to get these things down. He was holding it back here. I was holding it with my foot, but 80 foot-pounds. Man, it sure seems like a lot. So, I guess on to the next one. I won't show you guys that. You got to see kind of how this went. I didn't show you like me torquing them down, but you got to see kind of how it went together. We'll pop the other side on, and then we'll continue. Now we have both heads on. Same situation on this side, guys. No issues whatsoever. This is getting exciting now because, you know, a big part of the motor's together. But now we are moving on to, we're going to put the manifolds on, so the turbo manifolds. And I'm hoping, it's just me out here. I'm gonna clean the mating surfaces off here. And guys, I'll probably go back and clean some of this old, like that stuff just oozes out everywhere where you put the head bolts on. But I chose to go with new GM gaskets. So like these guys here, the metal ones. And I also chose to go with an ARP fastener, guys. These are, it's so common for these to break, especially in the trucks. I wanted a quality fastener, so this is what I chose to go with, and I'll list this below as well. But we're gonna see if I can get this started on my own. That manifold's pretty heavy, especially with the turbo and stuff on it, and I kind of gotta line up the drain plug down there. Now, if you look back at some of my older videos when I first assembled this, you can see, you know, kind of the process of me going through and assembling the turbos. But when I took them off the other motor, I took them off all as one piece. And so I'm hoping that's the way I can get them back on. So I'm gonna go grab one, and I may time lapse some of this so you guys can see me struggle, I guess. Okay, so a little surprising. It wasn't as bad as I thought. Initially getting them started, I thought I was gonna have more issues with the drain down there, and I'll show you guys that here in a minute. But now, this is a 10 millimeter 12 point. I've got them snugged up against the block, and we're gonna work our way through torquing these down next, starting in the middle and working our way out. Okay, these guys torque to 11 foot-pounds first pass, and then 18 the second. And so we're gonna start in the middle, go back here. This is just the way I've always done it. I'm pretty sure this is the best method to go back and forth. You can see how much easier, guys, this is outside the car. Once we get down to 11, then we'll move it up to 18 and make our final pass. And then of course we got to do the same thing on the other side. All right, let's get the 18 pass, and then I'll throw the other side on off camera. Woo! Man, it looks good. All right, so here's what I'm gonna move on to now. I think I'm gonna go ahead and put spark plugs in. Guys, I pulled the spark plugs out. What am I using here? This is what I'm using, TR5, what is that, a 9? This is what was recommended to me by Huron Speed. So I'm gonna go ahead and put those back in. Like I said, I pulled them out of the other motor. And the main reason, guys, is I'm wanting to keep the motor, you know, as closed up as possible. So we're gonna get down here and work on the oil lines and stuff here after a while. I hooked the drains up as we came together. They just come off the bottom of the turbo on each side, and the pan was already welded for that, but I do need to snug those up. And I was kind of worried about my motor mounts being in the way, but I think we're gonna be good there. I think we can probably go ahead and torque those. I didn't torque those earlier. So let's get the actual plugs in. May have to take them out at some point, or at least one to spin the motor over if it has a ton of like pushback or compression. But for now, I just want to close up those openings. Kind of raining outside, but Got a few more parts that I want to get put together, and you can see that I've cleaned some stuff up. It's been a few days. Starting with coolant temp sensor. I didn't like the other one. It felt to me like it had a little bit of play in it in the plastic piece here, and I just didn't want to risk it. So we're going to get this guy started, and you notice it comes, this is a GM one. I like to buy GM parts when available, but you'll notice that it has some pipe thread on it. So I'm going to run this in by hand, and then we'll see if we can find a torque spec on it. So aside from that, we do need to put the plug back in on the other side, because these heads can actually go on either side. Your temp sensor can go in either way as well. So let's get it spun down. I think it's a 3/4, and once we get that done, just want to make sure you're not cross-threading it. That felt, I think we're to the pipe threading is the problem. But yeah, do it by hand to make sure you're not cross-threading. Now that we've got that ran down, you need to torque both sides. The other one's just a plug. To 15 foot-pounds. Make sure that you put pipe thread on the other one, because I'm reusing the bolt that came out of it. Now that we got those, moving on to the oil pressure sensor, which I got a new GM one as well. Guys, I suggest getting a new one. A lot of times they're cracked here, and I don't love putting it in right now, but I want to try it. Like I said, I'm trying to close up the motor to make sure that we don't have anything in it. This guy also gets torqued to 15 foot-pounds. So you're gonna have to have the deep socket that goes with this. I would love to know out there, and let me know in the comments, guys, if you know this, but the newer style, so the shorter one that comes on like the trucks, if the blocks are interchangeable, why couldn't you just use one of those? Is the plug different? That's what I'm wondering, because they're way cheaper. This is ridiculously expensive. Let's get it torqued down to 15, then we're gonna move on to the cam position sensor. Got that one torqued. Onto this guy. I bought a new one of these as well, brand new GM, another expensive part out of the GM catalog. And mainly because I wanted a new seal. And guys, look, if you're putting a motor together and you've done all this stuff, it's just, don't cheap out. It's so easy to just cheap out on little things like this. I know it's like, you know, it's like 160 bucks for both these from GM. And I just trust the GM brand. But man, it would sure suck to have an oil leak back here because of this one, or you get it in and one doesn't work. Even though we took them out of a working engine, yeah. So 18 foot-pounds is what this guy goes down to. Now, even though we do not have the AC compressor yet, I figured it'd be a good idea to, let's go ahead and put this guy in place. The other thing, obviously I don't have a crank pulley yet, guys, but either way, I figured we'd get this into place. There's only 4 bolts. I cleaned this up off camera. You could see I cleaned the bolts with my grinder over there and the brush. They'll probably rust and look like crap after a week, but makes me feel better. So let's get this on, torque these down to 37. Now, even though I don't have an alternator, I'm gonna go ahead and put this guy in place. I'm not gonna torque it yet, but I'm gonna put it in place. I really wanna see all the fitment issues, and I'm gonna try to snag an alternator and a pulley before obviously we get things going, but I want this stuff off my counter over there. So there's no way to like line that up without having the alternator. But what I can do is I can put this guy up into place, kind of the way it goes. So I've got all 3 of the bolts in here. And like I said, even though I don't have an alternator, it's not really gonna matter, but I want it off my counter. 37 on these as well. Now that we got that on, guys, I think we are finished for this video. This is pretty much the place. You can see that I put the valley, I just set the valley cover in here. It's not bolted down because I have to take it out of place in order to put the attachment to lift the motor. But I think, I mean, we'll get this torqued down and all the intake and the valley cut. Like I noticed, you know, obviously you're noticing that I don't have any valve covers, I don't have any rockers. Look, guys, I'm ordering, I'm trying to find the right push rod size, which we'll go through down the road. But this gets me to a point, I'll probably put valve covers on when I set it on the engine stand. But it gets me to the point where I can set it in there with the turbos on it, bolt the transmission down there to it, which is going to get rebuilt actually this week. So we can bolt this stuff together, and then we could set it on the K-member. we can set the transmission on another dolly or a jack, and we can roll it under there. We can set the car down on it, make sure we don't have any clearance issues. So as far as like the motor, obviously we're not gonna have any clearance issues there. It's this area like here and here where we had to roll over the side of this car that I want to make sure of before I, you know, like I said, paint. So I know it's a little more work, and the manual's not calling for that, guys, but that's just kind of how I like to do things. So I wanted to get the motor as closed up as possible. I'm putting a bag on it when I go inside. And then, like I said, I will probably put the valve covers on it just for now, just to keep any dirt and debris out of it. It's not like we get a ton of stuff out here, but, you know, keeping moisture out of the engine and any issues like that. But we still got some parts to buy. I really need, I'm thinking about getting a SFI approved flywheel. Obviously I need the transmission rebuilt. It doesn't have to be rebuilt, but guys, it's another one of those things where since it's out, I'm gonna at least have it freshened up. Those 4L80s are pretty tough in the stock setting, but aside from that, we've got a majority of these parts on the motor, and I'm excited about it, guys. This is the closest I feel like I've been. I know we've had it to this point before, but I'm more excited about it now than I ever have been. So anyway, hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, please, like always, go down there and smash that thumbs up button. Guys, if you are not subscribed, go down there, hit the subscribe button. Of course, ring that bell icon that notifies you every time we drop a new video on this or anything else. And stay tuned to see this thing come together.